Morning, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Or good afternoon, whenever you happen to be listening to this. Let me just check the platforms real quick. See if we're good on them all. Into this Facebook. What's happening? You see what we're talking about today. It's Win-Trapreneur Wednesday. Regular consumers of my work, you know what that means. If you're new here, just give it a second and I will explain it all to you, as I do every single day, particularly every single Wednesday. We're going to address it. We going to address it. All right. Win-Trapreneur Wednesday. All right. LinkedIn, we're good to roll. Let's get that reposted. And let me just check YouTube real quick to make sure we're all good. Boom, 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 boom. All right, bet. Testing. Mic check 1, 2. All right, YouTube, we're good. All right, here we go. All right, good morning, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day you may be tuning into this. Good afternoon to you all. Let me just introduce myself to anybody that may be new. My name is Aswan Crookshank. I am your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, former Division I college football player, and current 5-time, soon to be 6-time published author. And what I do, what I created, what the whole Move Swiftly framework is all about is taking the lessons, the teamwork lessons, the innovative teamwork lessons, to be more specific, that you learn on the football field and aligning them with businesses, with businesses and business owners. So they have a staff, they have a system in place in which they have a staff, a group of employees, a group of people that move as cohesively and as hungry or as eager, as passionate as a championship high school or youth football team. That's what we do around here. And everything we do, every single topic that we cover, every single time I turn this camera on, every single time put the mic on, it's all about creating that cohesion. It's all about using the lessons and creating that cohesion, because that's what's going to take your business to the next level. All right. So as far as what we are going to be discussing today, we're talking Stephen A. Smith. We've been talking Stephen A. Smith for feels like about a week now, since the whole LeBron thing went down, but he did. And here's the crazy thing. Had that thing not happened with him and LeBron, I would not even have known about the negotiations with him and ESPN, because I don't really pay attention to that stuff like that. I'm usually kind of the person that's kind of trashing ESPN, to be honest with you, because the mainstream media and what I do, there's always a clash. I'll just say it like this. I couldn't necessarily do what he does if I had to say some of these things that he says, because I know it's Disney talking. Like, I was just actually listening to him on Gil's Arena podcast we're going to talk about today. And it's refreshing to hear him on individual platforms versus hearing him on ESPN. You could feel like the Queensborough. He's from New York. You feel the New Yorker in him more like a New Yorker than some ESPN dude. So we're going to address all of that today as we get into today's Win-Trapreneur feature. Before we do that, let me get through some announcements really quick, and then we will go from there. First things first, anybody living in West Palm Beach, Florida, if you are interested, make sure you hit that QR code that you see right there on the screen. Or if you're listening to this virtually or listening to this via the podcast, go to free boxing or boxing lessons. Yeah. Free boxing lessons at makeyourmove.com, or like I said, hit that QR code that you see right there on the screen. I do boxing lessons every 2 weeks. And if you are interested in doing that, please do not hesitate to get in contact with me about that. Also, as I mentioned, business owners. I'm here to serve you, here to help you. If you have not yet done so, go to freeguide.makeyourmove.com. I create a free guide that has 10 steps, 10 things that you could be doing right now to create a cohesive unit. I put together a 10-step process that's easy for you to understand, easy for anybody to understand, and it's something that you need to have in place in your organization so it doesn't become stagnant. Your organization and the people walking into your business day in and day out do not become stagnant. All right. Also, and tap into the patreon.com/as144. We have something for everybody, regardless of where you are in terms of profits, preseason, regular season, postseason. Just contact me to get some information about that. And final announcement here. Let me just show you here. All of that is available for you. No. Yes, I do need this. Yes. Right here, makeyourmove.com or makeyourmove.com. That's makeymove.com. You can shop, you can join the Patreon, you can book me to speak, or if you just simply want to learn more about your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, it's right there. Learn more about Aspen. And you can listen to the Move Swiftly podcast. It's all right there. All right. So let's get into today's topic. Because we got quite a few things to discuss when it comes to Stephen A. Smith. And I look at him, to this day, look at him as somebody that, had it not been for his story, had it not been for him opening up doors for folks like me, I would not be able to do the work I do. I would not see the value in the work I do. That does not mean that I don't disagree with him. There's so much stuff. I mean, I don't, to the point now, actually, before I get into that, let me just give you a definition of what a Win-Trapreneur is, and then we'll talk about that. What a Win-Trapreneur is basically taking the mindset of an entrepreneur. You have an entrepreneurial minded person who has a job, just like Stephen A. Smith. And one of the things I do respect about him is he's not hesitant or isn't shy about telling people that he has bosses and he has a job, he has a day job that he has to adhere to, and he has certain things compliancy from a compliance standpoint that he has to make sure he does, because he does have a boss, right? Take the entrepreneurial minded person, you take that person who has a job and they've been blessed enough to land themselves in a situation in which their entrepreneurial vision is aligning with what the vision of the job is. Take both of them. Normally that people call those folks intrapreneurs, but because you're speaking to your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, I have to take the term and add a W at the beginning and turn it into Win-Trapreneur. And this year, as of 2025, I've actually just officially have started, and book number 6 is going to be all about, it's going to be actually documented in the newest book that I have. I haven't put it up for pre-sale yet. The goal is to get it ready for pre-sale probably sometime around April, May time to get it ready for pre-sale. But book number 6 is going to be all about how to be a Win-Trapreneur. All right. So again, that's Stephen A. Smith. Like him, don't like him, whatever your position is on him, you have to give him credit because his heart is always in the right place. All right. And as I was mentioning before, as I've watched him for so long, as I've watched him over the years, we got to just take a moment. We got to take a moment and congratulate him on this deal. All right, regardless of how you feel about it. And before I even get started on some of the things that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to praise Stephen A. Smith quite a bit on today's episode, but I also have to speak on, to be fair, I have to speak on the things I don't like about him, the things that I am totally against. And in fact, I'm one of the people that, to be 100% honest with you, I find myself listening to more Jason Whitlock than I do Stephen A. Smith, to be 100% honest with you, because with Jason Whitlock, he has his own platform. Jason Whitlock no longer works for ESPN. Jason Whitlock, you're getting a very logical critique about how he feels, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whatever it is. I myself, as a creator, as a content creator, I owe it to not only myself, but whoever may be in my audience now and whoever is coming into my audience later on in life. You owe it to yourself to learn from different perspectives and have different viewpoints. All right. So when it comes to Stephen A. Smith, as I've grown as I've grown in the content creation world, as I've grown in the public speaking world, to the point now where I can hold a conversation, I can have a show like this 5 days a week that lasts for about an hour and continuously move forward. And, whether I forget something, whether I don't do a great job here, whatever it is. I've learned from watching these guys that, hey, just keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep getting better, right? I have not been I can't watch his football takes anymore. And that's what I'm saying. The reason I probably listen to more Whitlock, or I wouldn't even say Whitlock, probably listen to more like the facility where you have at Emmanuel Acho and Shady McCoy and the guy from Chase Daniel. A lot of these guys who actually play the game of football, and football is my sport. I can't listen to Stephen A. Smith when he talks football. I just can't. I can't take it. I can't take it because it's so, in my mind, I should be sitting at a desk debating him on, like, I can see the points where you'll see certain takes, right? You'll see certain takes on First Take. And there's a reason that they're the #1 show, because he does it, to his credit, he does have people who play the game of football. He invites these people on to play, who played the game, to, educate him live on, and you hear him sort of being educated with the way the game works. But when he starts talking football, I can't listen to it, because he's only talking about the quarterback, and he's only, looking at stats and not really breaking down the game. Like, if you watch me, the way I break down the game of football, I'm breaking down which guard is pulling. I'm breaking down what the DN is doing. I'm looking at how the tight end is stepping here. I'm looking at how the receivers are blocking. I'm looking at all of it. I'm not just paying attention to what the quarterback does. And what has happened is you get a Stephen A. Smith who is in a situation in ESPN, and you have him give these football takes, and people that really know the game of football, it starts to turn us off over time. So that's the one that's probably the main thing that I don't like about Stephen A. But also, just to address the Whitlock situation, when it comes to Jason Whitlock and the critique that and I read it. I read Straight Shooter by Stephen A. Smith. It was a fantastic read, right? I read the same book that Jason Whitlock read. And if you're not familiar with what happened, basically last year, Jason Whitlock is another, sports media personality who him and Stephen A. Smith have been in just an all out war, to the point where I was tuned into it, because I was just like, I was getting into the game, and I see my future self as being one of those dudes that got a lot of people taking a lot of shots at it, but there's a lot of respect, but then there's also a great deal of people who don't like the things I got to say. They don't necessarily want to hear my opinion, or they think what I say is some bullshit and all that. Again, I'm ready for all the smoke. I'm ready for all of that. And I look at folks like that and I say, hey, they've done it. They paved the way. Now it's Aswan's job to go and, bum rush the door and say, let's do this. Let's do it for real. Let's do it for real. That's what creates the platform I've created, right? So as it came out, and Whitlock is one of those dudes that, he's, in my opinion, personally, about Jason Whitlock, he's always kind of reaching in a way. And the thing about it, he's reaching, but it makes sense. If that he's reaching, and as someone that has listened to both Whitlock and Stephen A. Smith for quite a few years, he reaches on some points, but the points are super valid. They're super valid, and they do have some credibility in them. And he reaches, and I think anybody who's ever been very critical of Whitlock will admit, hey man, look, he actually has a point. Stuff be making sense, because I remember reading Straight Shooter. And if you're not familiar with the book, Straight Shooter is a New York Times bestseller that Stephen A. Smith wrote about a year and a half ago. And he talked about when he talked about when he got an opportunity to play basketball at Winston-Salem University, right? And I remember reading it, and basically the story that he put in his book was that, he got driven from New York to Winston-Salem University, and he hit 17 threes in a row. And all of a sudden he got a scholarship because he hit 17 threes in a row. Now, I read that, and I never looked at it and said, oh, he's lying about that, because I don't know what incentive Stephen A. Smith would have to lie about where he played basketball. We don't know him because of his ability to play basketball. We know him because of his ability to cover basketball and articulate the game and break down the game in a very well said soliloquies and stuff like that. Just incredible vocabulary, all that stuff. We've seen that for years now. So when Jason Whitlock brought up the fact that the guy hit 17 threes and, he brought up certain stats, and it threw me off because, again, I read the same thing, but my takeaway from it wasn't, Stephen A. Smith is lying about where he played. So when it comes to people that you look up to, and I'm bringing all this up for a reason, guys, because as business owners, we're always, you got to really understand everyone's going to have their opinion. Everyone's going to have their thoughts. Everyone's going to have a certain perspective and a certain takeaway from whatever information is presented. And it's up to you to simply hear out the information, learn what you can learn, and then move forward in a way that's going to be beneficial to your business. Again, you get a Whitlock and just use me as an example. You get a Whitlock and a Stephen A. Smith. One person is saying that he lied about the fact that he played ball. The other person obviously put it in his book saying it's true. Me personally, I don't really care one way or the other if he played or he didn't play, who's right, who's wrong. At the end of the day, we don't watch Stephen A. We don't tune into Stephen A. Smith because of what he's done, because he's done anything significant on the basketball court. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, why does it even make sense that we're even questioning it? It just becomes a waste of time. So that's where, again, I'm one of those people that have been able to kind of listen to both of them and be able to develop my own style, my own critique, and my tone, my pitch, and what it is I do and all that kind of stuff. So those are really the only negative things that I see when it comes to Stephen A. Smith. Right now, what I'll do, I want to play you guys the article that I just put out. I just put out this article today. It's a quick 3-minute read about everything that Stephen A. Smith represents and why, again, as a Win-Trapreneur, there is so much that you have to consider when it comes to how you serve your people. All right. When it comes to how you serve your people over long periods of time, listen to this article, and then I'm going to break it down because all of this stuff is still here, and it kind of boils back down. Let me just make this point really quick. It kind of boils back down to a point that I made yesterday in terms of we're able, because the internet is what the internet is, we're able to track what a person says over a period of time. So the question now becomes, what are you putting out there? What are you putting your name behind? What exactly are you going to be representing 10, 15, 30 years down the line? Because this stuff is going to stay, and it's going to be something in which you're going to be able to affect people in a hopefully it's a well, if you're in my work, if you're listening to what I'm doing, it's definitely going to be in a positive way, because that's what I like to keep around my business and what I keep around the work I do. So I'll let the article play and then we'll go from there.
Stephen A. Smith, the ultimate Win-Trapreneur. The news made its rounds across the internet over the weekend. Stephen A. Smith signed a long-term deal with ESPN. Despite my frustration with many of his football takes, so much so that I no longer have the patience to listen to them, I have to acknowledge the magnitude of this achievement. I'll even overlook the valid questions Jason Whitlock has raised about his college basketball career and the audacity of his unwavering stance on never putting anyone ahead of Michael Jordan. Instead, I'll take a moment to congratulate the man. The deal he signed with ESPN, given his journey, is no small feat. Having read Straight Shooter by Stephen A. Smith, I never walked away with the same skepticism that Whitlock did. The idea of someone making 17 three-pointers in a row and earning a scholarship on the spot was certainly unique, but at the end of the day, I felt Whitlock was reaching, as he often does. Stephen A. Smith isn't known for playing basketball, so who really cares? What truly matters is why he's this week's Win-Trapreneur feature. Smith was one of the first to open the door for professional athletes to have a voice beyond just playing the game. I vividly remember watching, quite frankly, when he interviewed Allen Iverson. That entire episode, which is still available here, was a revelation. As much as I admired Iverson, I, like 99% of young athletes, recognized that I had a better chance of becoming Stephen A. Smith than Allen Iverson. This realization hit me again when Smith appeared on All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. At the time, I was just watching the Move Swiftly podcast. He made a statement that stuck with me. You may not grow to be as a LeBron or have the talent of an Allen Iverson, but who can't read and write. The full episode is available here. That statement landed squarely in my chest because, while I often disagree with Smith, I respect the fact that he has built a reputation that encourages young, ambitious, Black thought leaders to challenge him. That's exactly what we need. One of the most influential college professors I ever had, Dr. Georges Foron, often told me that growth happens when we challenge authority and develop our own opinions. Stephen A. Smith embodies that principle. His career has paved the way for individuals like myself, who create quality content without feeling the need to work for ESPN. He broke barriers, opened doors, and proved that one can be both an independent thinker and a corporate powerhouse. For clarity, entrepreneurs with an entrepreneurial mindset thrive within a company or system that aligns with their entrepreneurial vision. Smith is the epitome of this. In closing, I invite you to watch a recent interview he did with Candace Owens, available here. Owens shared a story about the game, waving at him like a crazy fan, only for him to finally come over and shake her hand. That moment was something she brought up when appearing on his show. Much like his Iverson interview on Quite Frankly, this moment highlights an undeniable truth. Regardless of how wrong he may be at times, his heart is always in the right place. He has set an incredible example of what it means to be a Win-Trapreneur.
All right, so let's break all that down. All right, let's talk about it first and foremost, because I'll tell you now. Actually, I'm gonna pull up the interview now. I'm gonna tell you now. You know, I grew up absolutely diehard Allen Iverson fan. All right, I grew up a diehard Allen Iverson fan because of what he was as a player, because of what he accomplished and what he was all about as a player. And speaking from the kid's perspective, a kid who was a diehard fan, it is absolutely, you know, when you're a kid and kid like me who had these goals, had these dreams, have, you know, these sports heroes, just so into sports because sports is where I got my acceptance. And you idolize these guys. Back at the time, I will say it like this, back in my day, it didn't have no social media. Social media wasn't the thing. We just knew these guys as players. We didn't necessarily get too into their personal lives. We didn't know their social accounts. We didn't follow them on Instagram or anything like that. We just knew what they were as players, and we would fight for them. We would get into debates. We'd get into conversations about our favorite players, right? So as this was going, this was the first time with the interview that you're looking at right now. This was actually the first time that I can remember, and I'm just speaking off the things I know I can remember. You see it right here. You see the date, 2005. That is 20 years ago, folks. 20 years ago. 2005 was the first time that I have ever seen a professional athlete open up the way that Allen Iverson opened up. Now, I'm not playing the sound for a reason because I don't want to get, I wanted to make a point of just the contextual, the context of this. But at the beginning of this interview, all right, at the beginning, and I've watched it on multiple occasions. Let me see if I can scrub through it really quick so you guys see it. But there's a period here where Allen Iverson gets emotional. He gets emotional. All right. Let me just get to it. They're talking about Larry Brown. I'm wondering if it's here. I think it's there. Right. There's a period in this interview in which he gets absolutely emotional about, yeah, this is it. I just saw it. This is, yeah, right here. All right. So pay attention to this. I'm not going to I'm going to let the sound play. All right. But when I saw this is 2005. So that makes me sophomore in high school. It makes me a sophomore in high school. All right. And I was one of those that wore the Iverson jersey. I'm sticking up for him. I'm talking about, yeah, Iverson is this. Iverson. Like anybody who knows me back then knows I used to go at it with any Kobe fan saying that Iverson was him. All right. I would go at it. We'd go back and forth for hours. Now, when I saw this interview and I saw how emotional he got and I saw him open up, and Iverson was the first one. In this show, quite frankly, he interviewed D-Wade, he interviewed Kobe. I think there was another player that he interviewed on the show. It didn't last too long, but when you look at the landscape and the way things are set up now, where now these athletes have their own platforms, you have the I Am Athlete, or used to have the I Am Athlete podcast, but you got the Pivot podcast, you got Gil's Arena, the thing that he was on just yesterday. You got just a ton of athletes who have their own show. This was the start of it. You got to give him credit, regardless of how you feel about Stephen A. Smith. You got to respect the deal that he signed, because he was actually the one that opened the door for athletes to open up the way that you see athletes opening up now as they are building out their own platform. So as I'm gonna let it play, because I remember watching this as a kid, and this is 20 years later. 20 years later, it still resonates with me because of the authenticity. He's talking about Larry Brown right now, and look at his face as the Larry Brown clip plays. Look at it. Just look at it. He gets into it, and as a kid, seeing that side of him, things started to open up, because you started realizing, there's something special. Quite frankly, was the show that opened up doors that you would never have realized. All right. So watch it. Just give it a second. Watch it play. Watch as he talks about Larry Brown, and then watch Iverson's face. Go ahead. This is it. Just watch it. So he had Larry Brown on, who's his coach with the 76ers, and then watch his face. Watch his face. Watch him start getting emotional. Watch it. It's coming. It's coming. You already see it. You already see it. Mm-hmm. You see it, right? That was it. It was that setting. All right. It was that setting, that interview, that in which I think about it, because it's taken me back to my high school self. And you see the emotion. You see how raw and uncut. Think about me. Think about me being, not think about me like as an all about me thing, but think about the way I was in 2005 as a fan. I was a fan of the way Iverson was as a player. And then you see that interview and you realize this isn't just a player. This is a human being. What we do is a human being. All right. And then you start to get into the concept of what I talked about in the article, where you ain't going to be Allen Iverson. The majority of people are going to be, no one, very few people, if they're lucky, are going to be as good as Allen Iverson was on the basketball court. You have a better chance of being Stephen A. Smith than you do Allen Iverson. And I was around during that time where this was put out there. And I started thinking to myself, okay, how can I be someone that commentates on the game, covers the game, does it in a fair and articulate way, but at the same time, be critical and say, hey, look, if you playing shit, you playing shit. Because this is what put Stephen A. Smith on the map for a lot of people, is that, when you playing shit, you're playing shit, and he would call it like he sees it. And as things started to happen, as technology started to advance, I remember there got to a point where it was this show. Yeah, I'm going to show it now. Because this is, again, what we're doing here is we're just going through chronological order. And this one was, 5 years ago. 5 years ago was around COVID time. This was the first time that I actually heard All the Smoke podcast. And ironically, it was around the time where I put out my first ever book. I officially became a thought leader. I officially was, that guy that's actually trying to sell some intellectual property. I started up this very podcast during that time, and I was trying to figure out, who do I listen to? Who have I seen over the years, dominate the space, or who can I learn from so I can establish myself, I can establish my tone, I can establish my voice, I can establish something in which I can just continue to improve upon, right? So everything that I felt when I watched that Iverson interview for the first time, it was crazy. I'm going to go back to the dates here. All right. We got 5 years ago. We got 2005 with this one, right? 2005, full version 2005. And then we got just 5 years ago. And this was the show and again, like I said at the beginning, when you get a Stephen A. Smith on this type of platform, it's a different conversation. It's a different version of, not to say that he's fake when he's on ESPN, but it's definitely ain't the Stephen A. Smith that you get on ESPN, right? So as I was explaining to you guys in the article that, again, I just played for you guys earlier, is at this point, he confirmed and validated everything that I had thought in 2005 when he interviewed Iverson for Quite Frankly, to where it's like, yo, when you're looking at anyone that's a believer in sports, that loves sports and gets to a point where they're not good enough to play anymore. All of us do, even the professional athletes, but the majority of us who are involved in sports, we get to a point, we get to a place, we get to a realization, we come to the realistic understanding, your ass ain't gonna be good enough. Your ass is not going to be good enough to keep up with them young boys, or you just don't have the ability. That was my situation. Again, that doesn't mean I get to just stop watching. That doesn't mean you just, stop playing or stop being involved with it, stop, having interest, stop having conversation. No, it means you say to yourself, you really ask yourself, yo, what is the realistic future for what it is you want to do? Because it ain't going to be playing. You accepted that, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a young man's game. So as the older you get, the more you got to realize you got to develop a backup plan. And if you go back and you watch this entire interview, and this was, again, around the time where podcasting was just becoming a big thing. This was around COVID. A lot of people there wasn't as many podcasts as you see now. Everyone, was kind of putting the toe in the game, jumping in a few episodes here, a few episodes there once a week. Even me, myself, I started doing this and I would only put out maybe 2 new episodes a week or something like that. Now there's like multiple episodes coming out a day, right? And when I saw this show, and if you go back, if you listen to it, you will hear him say when Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, when they first came up with this show idea, he was like, yo, they got something special. They got something special because it was so reminiscent to Quite Frankly. It was so reminiscent to this unfiltered dialogue about what a professional athlete really goes through on the day-to-day and how they really feel. There's no extras. I mean, there's cameras there, but there's no overly, I'm trying to appease a certain person. It's just 2 people having conversation that have been professional athletes. And when they brought him in, it was like, okay, it gave me motivation to keep going. It gave me, because he's bringing up like Steph, Marbury. I mean, old school cats, like some of the cats, like telling sports story after 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 sports story. This is why I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Let's play Whitlock's game, right? And let's say he lied about the fact that he played college basketball, whatever. It doesn't take away from the fact that he's able to articulate sports stories that resonate with a lot of us who grew up in the sports culture and learned our business through sports, learned how to think, learned a lot of our relationships, learned how to build relationships, learned a lot of the things that we still use as an adult through sports. It doesn't take away the fact that he's been able to articulate these stories in a way that makes it so we're now motivated to keep going, keep doing our thing, keep putting out our content, keep pushing, keep driving, keep doing whatever it is you have to do to get on. You're talking about a man, again, who was fired. He was fired. Just think about how big of a deal this is. He was fired by ESPN. He was out of work. It's on camera. All of this stuff is tracked. He is on camera saying he was living off his savings for years. He was living off savings, and he just landed a huge deal with the company that fired him just a couple years ago. You got to respect it. Like him, don't like him. You simply got to respect the same way you got to respect the Donald Trump for coming back after all of the stuff, all the mudslinging, all the smearing, all the things that they tried to say about him, all of it. You got to respect that Donald Trump is back in office after going through all that for the past 4 years. Is the same way you got to respect Stephen A. Smith for landing this deal, because they let him go. They fired the man, and he still figured out a way to come back to the company that let him go and land this type of deal, long-term money. And I was listening, like I said, I was listening to him on the Gills Arena yesterday, and he was saying, yo, he didn't even get started yet. He gets started yet. Now that he's got the bag, now that he's got that long-term deal locked in with ESPN, now it's almost like he's just getting started in terms of doors he can open, things that you can move on, and there's certain things that can be said. And so that was what, 5 years ago, right? And then let's go to a recent one. Let's go to more of a recent one than what I talked about. What I talked about with Candid. What I talked about in the article. Recently, this woman. All right, here we go. Right? Here we go. Let me let that ad play for a second. All right, so that's the sports stuff, right? That's the sports stuff, and we've addressed that. I've addressed the sports thing and how a person like me watching that from the outside looking in is very motivated to, keep going and working and things like that. But after sports now, there's life, all right? And when it comes to life, there's politics that come with it. There's, procedures, policies, who's going to be our leaders, who's going to be in all sorts of things that come with it. And what he's done, it's almost like, what Jay-Z said. Jay-Z said this one time in one of the interviews that he was talking about. I can't remember what the interview was, but he was talking about how him as an artist, him as a rap artist, can exceed to the executive departments, executive levels, that we could transcend from just being, rap artists where we spit rhymes and all that. He was talking about how him as Jay-Z was able to exceed and move on and move up to the executive levels and be an AR and be someone that's now representing artists, and go run your own company, go run your own production company and build out your own thing, and not have, managers coming in and taking all your IP and taking all your intellectual, taking all your masters and all that, and, owning your stuff. Owning this, like one of the most things I'm proud of is being able to own this, like own your own intellectual property, whatever it sells. This is me. This is me putting it out there. This is me getting paid off my own thoughts, day in and day out. It's As One Crookshanks, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, checking in for a daily Move Swiftly thought. Do you understand the clarity? Do you understand the freedom that comes when you're getting paid? I don't give a shit how much it is, right? But the bottom line is you're getting paid based on your own thoughts. That's where we're trying to get you. We're trying to get you to the point where someone is taking money out of their pocket and paying you because of your own thoughts, your own unfiltered, raw, uncut thoughts. That is the mentality. That is the mentality that you got to take. All right. So as you see someone who's coming up in the sports world like he did, and to see him transcend into what he's doing in politics, that is something you got to respect. That is something you got to respect. Now, his politics is one of those things where you have to respect it because he doesn't have a dog in the fight. All right. Not a Republican, not a Democrat, at least based on what it's gotten said and what you see. Neither one of these, not a Republican, not a Democrat. And I remember him interviewing, I think it's Andrew Cuomo. One point, his brother, I think, was the governor of New York at one point, and he used to have the Cuomo show. I'm not sure. I think he's gone on and done his own independent thing now, as a lot of these media personalities have done. Right nowadays, you see a lot of people that were formerly on the legacy media, and they're going and trying to build out their own platforms, their own YouTube channels, and all that kind of stuff. So he had him on the show, and I remember him saying this that's very important for you guys to hear. Is he goes, Stephen A. Smith, the reason it's important for your voice to be in politics is because you don't have a dog in the fight. You don't have a dog in the fight. I would go listen to what Stephen A. Smith has to say from a politics standpoint before I go and watch watch CNN, or if I go watch Fox or one of these other places that actually report on politics, because I don't care what they have to say. I genuinely don't care what they have to. They're not in the sports. They don't talk sports. I'm a sports junkie, right? I want to hear what folks who, know sports and they've been able to kind of wet their beak or give their 2 cents in when it comes to the political views. I'm more interested in what they got to say about politics versus what somebody who calls himself a political commentator has to say. So when I saw this interview, as someone that, again, it's very unpopular at one point, it was very unpopular to be a black man, period. It's very unpopular to be supportive of Candace Owens. There was a point in which it was very unpopular. The first time I even heard the name, let me just tell you, the first time I even knew who Candace Owens was because of the fact that she and Kanye West decided to wear a White Lives Matter t-shirt. That was the first time I've ever heard the name. Obviously, you know who Kanye West is, but I didn't know who Candace Owens was until that was my first impression of this woman, right? And because of that, I dug into her mindset. I dug into what she was all about. I dug into how detail oriented she was in terms of what she puts out there, the journalistic view. I mean, just so much work that she does that you would never realize, and she said it even on this show. She goes, I'm just as critical to white people as she is to black people. But no, that's not what blows up. That's not what goes viral. The clips in which she holds white people accountable, those clips don't go viral because there's certain powers that want to create this divisiveness within, I don't use the term black community because I think it's actually a fallacy, but they want to create conflict with other black folks. All right. That's why you very rarely see anything that let's say Candace Owens says, you very rarely see it go viral if she's speaking or she's being harsh, she's critiquing a white person harshly, right? You don't see that kind of stuff go viral. You only see it when she's holding a black person accountable for certain things. Those are the things that start blowing up. And she was talking through that. She was explaining that on this show. Again, I recommend that you go listen to all of this stuff. But the point I'm making is for him to transcend from the sports perspective to where he can go and have a conversation with Candace Owens, who at one point, a black man in America, that my initial introduction to this woman was she's wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt, and they were absolutely maliciously wrong, absolutely nasty things said about her. And because I am who I am, I decided, hey, I'm going to give this woman a chance. I'm going to go listen to what she has to say. I'm going to go just listen to the mindset of a person who would be driven to wear a White Lives Matter shirt. I wanted to just know why. And then the more and more you listen to her, the more you realize she's actually looking out. She's actually one of those folks who's looking out. She's actually one of those folks who exposed BLM, put the documents, what they paid for the houses. I mean, just absolutely did surgery on that whole BLM movement thing. She did surgery on Kamala Harris's where she's from or where she's actually from. She absolutely did her thing in terms of just journalistic research and not just going out giving opinions and saying this and saying that. And that is what's needed. I don't care what color you are. You're simply, you as a citizen, you as an American citizen, you as a person, you simply deserve that kind of reporting. You deserve that kind of journalism. You deserve that kind of information being fed to you, not in a way where someone's giving you their personal opinion, but they're just giving you the facts and allowing you to think on your own. This is why it's important to be a critical thinker. This is why it's important to be an independent thinker. This is why it's important that, like I said at the beginning, to develop your own style, your own taste, your own way of doing things, your own systems, your own stuff. So as you move out into the world and information starts coming in, there can be a filter. There can be something that you're able to filter it through, so you can establish your name as something credible. That's what he represents. And when, again, you get someone who is primarily known in the sports world, transcending into the political landscape, transcending into the politics, that is incredibly, incredibly inspiring. And I'll close you out with this as I transition to the next point, is when you think about the power of it. Stephen A. Smith right now, I think there was some poll in which had him like number four as the person that could potentially run for president from the Democratic Party. And what he said was very profound, because it was brought up and obviously he addressed it and all that kind of stuff. Is he goes, the fact that I'm even polling, the fact that I'm even an option, shows you how in shambles the Democratic Party is. It shows you how the man ain't got nothing to do. He's just giving his opinion. His platform is big. We get all that. But the man ain't got nothing to do with no damn politics and what gets said. I mean, he's not going to be the president. Nobody voting for him to be the president of the United States. It is not happening. However, the fact that he was even polling, the fact that he even made a poll, I think anybody that grew up in the sports environment and grew up in the world of sports should be very encouraged by it, very encouraged at the fact that he would even be thought of as a person that can do it. Because that, again, like he said, that's not going to happen. Stephen A. Smith is not going to be the president of the United States. No, that's just taking stuff too far. It's taking it too far. Right. So let's get to my final point here, because as it all went down, as everything was happening, I was prepping for this and seeing, just kind of thinking about the whole journey, whether it's from the Iverson interview to all the smoke, that I showed you earlier, to Candace Owens, to just yesterday. All right, to just yesterday, where he was on Gil's Arena. And I'm telling you, so when it comes to these shows, because there's so many, and it's important for me to, like I was telling you yesterday, to have my own news source. And given that I'm putting out as much content and putting out the content as well, I don't necessarily get a chance to listen to all the full episodes. I didn't listen to the full 2 hours. I would try to figure out what clips to watch or something that's interesting to me, something that I know I'm going to be discussing here on these live streams, and I would try to tune in and figure all that stuff out. So because I was talking about the situation that he had with LeBron, the incident that he had, that's kind of actually what sparked everything throughout this week. I tuned into the 45 minutes in which he addressed the LeBron situation, and then I kind of dabbled into the GOAT conversation a little bit. But the main thing I listened to it's a whole 2 hours long. And again, anybody got time to be listening to a whole 2 hours of Stephen A. Smith talk? We don't got time. If you're going to be putting out the content, you're not going to have time to be just watching it for that long. However, I did listen to the part of the interview in which he had I think it was like 40. Let me check real quick. I think it was like 40 minutes in which he addressed the situation that happened between he and, hold on, let me make sure I get the times right. I'll close you guys out soon with this. All right, let me just make sure real quick. It's 40 minutes, 41 minutes. It's worth the 40 minutes of your life, by the way. So I listened to the 40 minutes of him discussing the situation that happened with LeBron. And I gotta tell you, it was a full circle. It was absolutely a full circle moment. It's a full circle moment for anybody that's included in the sports. All right. I mean, I'm going to go back to what I told you earlier too. We are in 2025. This interview with him and Allen Iverson happened in 2000. That is 20 years of this conversation right here, unfiltered, live on camera, him allowing an athlete to open up and explain themselves, or, because the media likes to paint athletes as this, and, everyone loves to shit on athletes and shit on professional athletes for some of the things that they made a mistake in publicly and all that. But to be able to do something for 20 years, to be that far ahead of the curve, and then you see this where it's the same setting, but now it's actually the athlete who's owning the production, owning the show. Now you got to give him a hand clap. You just simply got to give him a hand clap. You got to give him a hand clap, congratulate him for the deal, and understand that that money, that deal isn't just about Stephen A. Smith. It's about everyone that wants to talk sports, everyone that sees their legacy or their career or being progressive in terms of their sport experience, what they've experienced in sports, and they see value in their story and see value in telling their story, and they see a future in just being able to tell the stories that you've lived through as a person that grew up in the sports culture. If you take anything away from all the talking I did today, was simply take that away from it. Understand, granted, you ain't going to agree with everything somebody says, but you got to simply respect the fact that doors are now being open for you to go out and challenge folks. You go out and you go create your own stuff, and then we'll see what happens there. But you got to give certain folks the respect that they deserve when doors are being opened and new things are happening. And then the consistency to be able to do it, to stick to your platform, or stick to your forte, which is the setting that he's in now, to stick to that for as long as you have. There's a respect factor that just got to give them respect. All right. So all that being said, again, tomorrow I will actually be diving deeper into a little bit more of this topic. We're going to be talking profits versus ethics. We'll be talking profits versus ethics, and we'll be diving deeper into that, where I'll be talking to you about my experience as a person that has worked in sports and all that. Again, main website to check out to dive deeper into everything I'm doing. It's makeyourmove.com. That's makeyourmove.com. You'll see it right there. You can shop now. You can join the Patreon. You can book me to speak, book me to come and talk to your business or talk to your staff to get them revved up, get them ready to go. You see this, I do this every day, right? So, or you can just simply learn more about me and tune into the podcast. Everything is right there on makeyourmove.com. You guys out there, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon. Later.